Yo, what's up everybody? How you doing? This is Coach Renz, and I come to you today with an incredibly heavy heart. So yesterday, while I was finishing up a video called Stop Holding On to Your Scars and hit that reset button, unbeknownst to me, at that exact time frame that I was finishing editing that video and getting it ready to submit and timing the publishing for this afternoon, my Uncle Eddie was, far as I know thus far, blindsided by a car while he was riding his motorcycle. Now for my family, this is very, very hard, very difficult. It's not easy when anyone passes, but in my 47 years, we've only had two sudden passings, two sudden transitions, and they've both occurred within the last couple of years, to include my uncle. So this morning I decided to come up to Stone Mountain just to continue getting my perspective, my thoughts, collecting myself. And when I got up here on the climb, I started eulogizing my uncle to myself. Not something for, I don't know what my family's going to do yet, but just for myself, what did my uncle mean to me? A couple years ago I did a video when one of the babies in my family passed away. We've never experienced that. And this is the first time again that we've had a tragic death by motorcycle. And the thing about it is that in my family, for at least 2-3 generations, that's all we grew up riding motorcycles. So it's the first time we've ever lost someone to transition because of that. But so my uncle Eddie. There are three things about my uncle that meant the most to me. I know it's going to be different for other people in my family. He meant different things, but it's three primary things that he meant to me, three primary things that I learned from him. You see, my uncle wasn't an old uncle for me. He was, my grandparents were from the country, so my uncle is only about 4 or 5 years older than I am. He grew up with he grew up with nieces and nephews that were more like brothers and sisters. So that's why, like, my sister and my cousin and my brother especially, and my cousin Bernard, they take it so much harder, so hard, because it's like losing their brother, in the same way that my mom and my aunts and my uncles have lost their brother. My uncle was, this particular uncle, my Uncle Eddie was the seventh child of my grandparents. Seventh child of my grandfather, fifth of my grandmother. So, he was young. But there's a couple things about my uncle, 3 things, and I'm gonna try to remember them specifically. I had them in my mind earlier, but this is not the easiest video for me to do. So one of the first things that my uncle represented to me and that he embodied, and that was family. In that video that I talked about, stop holding on to your scars, I talked about how in this world we are so negative. We love to hold on to negative things. But my uncle, family was vital. Family was important. Family was something that no matter what happened, you held on to family. If you know me very well, you know that my grandmother, his mother, she was my heart. That was my grandmother, Isabel. That's why my cousin, who is named after her, and everybody calls her by her middle name, she is always Isabel to me, because Isabel, that was my love. And I was angry when she passed away. When she transitioned, I was very angry, and she was heartbroken. And I blamed a lot on my uncle. I was mad at him because he caused her a lot of heartache, in my opinion. And the thing about it is, I held on to that for a long time. At least a decade. I was angry with him. I didn't talk to him that much. I didn't deal with him unless I had to. and it was poisoning to me. And then about 15 years ago, my wife at the time, Kim, she was telling me, she was advising me that I really need to let this go, and I need to forgive myself, and I need to go to him and tell and apologize. And I did, and I went to him one evening at a family event. I pulled him to the side and I talked to him. I told him how I had been feeling all those years, and I apologized to him for feeling that way and for me blaming him, and that's why I kept my distance. And he didn't bat an eye. He told me that he understood, and he told me that I'm still his nephew, he still loves me, and that we family. He never held that against me. He never brought that up ever again. He never slighted me, treated me funny. You know, I was his nephew. I was his family. You know, from that moment, because I used to be very distant from my family, from that moment I re-engaged with my family even more. And I learned that from my uncle, from watching my uncle and how he dealt with family, his grandkids, his kids, the nieces, the cousins, his sisters. Now, it wasn't all perfect, not even to say the least, but I mean, we had our arguments, everybody had them. Like with my Uncle Eddie, he was so much younger than his sisters and brothers that he didn't know my grandfather when my grandfather was hell on wheels. He knew my grandfather after he had calmed down and became more of a grandfather and a father. So when him and his sisters, they get into these arguments and you don't say nothing bad about his grandma, about his mama or his daddy. That was one thing you could not say. You could talk all the trash you want about him. Don't you say nothing about his mama and his dad. But even when they would have these arguments that, you know, they would get heated. They would get heated. Within a few minutes, within a few 30, 40 minutes, an hour, we was family. We was family. We moved on and went back to the happiness, back to the joy, you know. So that was one of the biggest lessons from my Uncle Eddie, that in everything, family. You treat him right, he'll treat you right. You treat him bad, he gonna excuse you. But family, that was huge for him. That was very important. Another thing from my Uncle Eddie, a true testament, is that my uncle truly embodied the fact that no matter what decisions you make decisions that is to your best benefit. Even when they don't work out, you look for the silver lining and you just move on and you enjoy your life. My uncle would have fun in his life. He lived his life on his terms, unapologetically. Everything didn't always work out for him, and if something happened that held him back from being able to live at a higher standard or whatever the goal he was trying to get to, wherever he was at, whatever he could do, he would still max out at where he was and what he could do. You know, when he worked with my brother with his mobile car detailing company, my uncle was hustling. He didn't have any qualms about going and talking to people and getting folks to come and bring their cars so that they can detail them. And I mean, he worked hard, and then he played hard. He played hard. You know, like his vest said, burn rubber, not your soul. He played hard. He enjoyed himself. You know, people loved being around my uncle because he was fun. He was fun. He was going to be at a good time. He so loved where we're from. We're from Marietta. For those who are watching this and you from Marietta, you know what I'm talking about, true and blue. My uncle loved Marietta. He loved Marietta High Blue Devils. He loved Georgia Bulldogs. He loved his Falcons. He was Georgia from top to bottom, from outward to inward, true and blue, and all centered in Marietta. And he just loved Marietta. But he had fun. If there was an event going on with people that were true Marettans who grew up in Marietta, who, you know, that inner core families. You know, he was there. Those events that we have in Marietta, that many people who have moved to Marietta, no, they've moved to Marietta, who have moved to Marietta, they don't get invited to the Marietta events unless they know somebody, they married to somebody. But my uncle was there. He was there, and people anticipated him being there. He was he brought life to the party. He brought life to the cookout. He brought life to just sitting around. It was always, you know, he was fun. He was fun. Had a good time. Always had a good time. We go on our family vacation. We always had a good time. And what was funny, like I said, he lived life on his terms. When we be on our family vacation, and me and my brother and him, and we're out riding motorcycles, and you know, if he got too hot or got tired, want to go, he'd tell us, I'm going back. It didn't matter what we was going to do. He was going to go back. He was going to do what he wanted to do. And it didn't matter to him. He didn't take it as a slight. He didn't take it in any kind of way. He just kept going, you know, living his life. And that's a big thing. That's been a struggle for me. That has truly been one of my biggest struggles throughout my life, is truly just living my life in the best way, the most fun way that I know how. I was talking to my daughter, Sydney, last night at the family house, and you know, I was just remarking to her that, like, over these last 7 years, all I've done is work. All I've done is work. I go on my family vacations, that's about it. Maybe a little something here and there, but for the most part, it's all about work. You know, you don't see me that often enjoying myself, enjoying, you know, the abundance of life. I'm telling y'all to enjoy abundance of life, but I don't really do it as much as I should, because I'm always working, because I'm thinking, let me hit this goal and then I will. Let me hit that goal and then I will. But that balance has to be there. My uncle wouldn't surround himself with people who would negatively impact his life, or he just didn't want to be around, so, or that didn't fit his mode. And that's been a struggle for me. That's something that I'm learning, and I've been getting better at, but I'm learning, and my uncle is a beacon of that. My uncle is a beacon of that, and I've learned that from him. I've learned that from him a lot. The third and final thing that I learned from my uncle, that I alluded to in the other 2 points, but does need to stand out on his own, and that is, my uncle didn't hold on to his past. He didn't hold on to his past. He didn't hold on to your past. He didn't hold on to anger. He didn't hold on to frustration. My uncle did a lot of things that many people, most people, the law would say is wrong, and he didn't hold on to it. He didn't let that define him. It was so appropriate that I did part 1 of holding on to your scars and hitting that reset button, because my uncle is the epitome of not holding on to your scars. He didn't hold on. He didn't let his scars define who he was. He didn't let his scars define who he was to you. As I said, I held on to anger towards my uncle for a long time because of how I felt about my grandmother. He didn't hold that against me. Him and his sisters would get into these big arguments. He never held those arguments against them. Him and my brother would get into disagreements and arguments. He never held it against them. He didn't hold things against people. Now, if you wronged him too much and too often, he would dismiss you out of his life. Don't be a fool. He wasn't a fool. But for the things that he did in his life that caused him separation from his family, y'all know what I'm talking about. Marietta folks really know the details. He never let that hold him back. You know, when he found opportunities, he found ways to improve his life. He found ways to grow his life. He was never afraid to hustle. He was never afraid to work and go after what he determined his standard of life was going to be. He never wavered in that. And he didn't let the fact that, he spent time away down the road, as they say, hold him back and define his personality, define who he was. He didn't let that scar him. As many of us today let those things scar us, and we don't press that reset button. We don't say that, okay, that happened, but that's just something that happened to me. That's not me. He didn't let that hold him back. He didn't let that stop him from having fun. He lost an eye. He didn't let the losing of an eye stop him from enjoying his life, riding his motorcycle, courting, his girlfriend, Chris. He didn't let that stop him from going out and having fun, and he didn't let that stop him from, getting dressed up and that sort of thing. He didn't let anything, whether physical, spiritual, elemental, societal, nothing scarred him to the point that it changed who he was. We all grow from our experiences. We all change and from our experiences, but it's changing for the better. Changing for the better for yourself. And my uncle, he epitomized that. That's something that I definitely saw in him as I grew up. You know, I watched him be one of the best defensive players, you know, in Merida High football. Then I watched him go to college. He didn't find college for him. So he didn't listen, and he did what he wanted to do, and he came back and he did what he lived his life how he wanted to live it. Not how society says so, not how people say so. And you know, he defined his life. He defined his life. His experiences didn't define his life. He didn't let other people define his life. And that is one of the biggest, other than family. All three of those really are just so key. I'm gonna put them all as 1, 1, and 1. Those are 1, 1, and 1. You know, he didn't allow people to define his life. He didn't allow his scars to define his life. He never forsook his family. He always loved and showed love to his family, you know, and he was just unapologetically him. And he was fun. So this was my personal conversation, my personal ode, eulogy to my Uncle Eddie. You know, he transitioned, and wherever he transitioned to, whatever's going on with his consciousness, I know that he will forever burn rubber and not his soul. I'll forever love you, man. And some way, somehow, in some transitional period for me, I see you again. Gotta free yourself to be yourself, because your conscience, your greatness is not negotiable. Love you, man. Love you for real.